In today's video, ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Schumer is telling Republicans that he and Democrats will reopen the government if Republicans step aside and allow them to do what they want with ICE. Meanwhile, over 300 TSA workers have already quit amid the government shutdown. And while all of this is dragging on, travelers across the country are beginning to feel the impact with delays piling up at major airports. So what exactly do Democrats and Chuck Schumer want? As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know and to stay locked in with future videos. Subscribe to the channel and make sure you select all for your notification bells. That way YouTube never forgets to remind you when I drop a video. Let's get right into it.
We know the American people are on our side. We know that the only thing Republicans need to do is stay out of the way, and these programs will be funded today, and problems at the airports will go away.
Democrat leader yield?
I will.
So I assume the Democrat leader is aware of the fact that we have tried repeatedly to fund everything temporarily to allow the negotiations over the ICE budget to continue.
I am well aware, but that hasn't worked. What can work
And the reason
is
that
stop.
hasn't
No,
the reason that
I am
hasn't
not
worked
yielding back.
is because the Democrats have blocked it.
Yeah, the bottom line is Democrats are ready today. America watch. So all I say to my Republican colleagues, stop the speeches that you care about TSA. Don't talk the talk. Walk the walk. Let the legislation that we are proposing go forward without blocking it, and TSA will be back to work.
Yeah, and so what we got going on right now is a repeat of what we just saw just a few months recently ago, where Democrats decided that, hey, we're going to hold the American people hostage. We're going to hold federal workers hostage. We're going to try and crash and make things as uncomfortable as possible when it comes to the economy and people's daily lives and see how much we can affect it. And then we're going to try and pin it and point it towards the Trump administration. That was the goal last time, and that is the goal once again, where Chuck Schumer and Democrats are giving Republicans an ultimatum. You let us do what we want with ICE, and we will reopen the government. Other than that, really not much room for conversation, right? And so they're willing to hold the American people and federal workers once again in a difficult position where you have people quitting their jobs and leaving because they're not collecting a paycheck. And so now let's hear from the majority leader, John Thune, who he's not doing too well nowadays because they still haven't got the SAVE Act passed in the Senate. But he is explaining how Republicans and the president are willing to make concessions with ICE in order to get the government reopened. Let's take a listen.
Usually around here, in order to get a deal, there has to be a negotiation where the two sides sit down together. And my understanding is that has been completely rebuffed by the senator from Washington. And so we are here today, and we are trying to close a deal that would enable us to fund all the agencies that the Democrats say they want funded with reforms to ICE. And I've seen the offer sheet from the White House, and they have gone a lot farther than any Democrat I think was even possible. And so we have a situation here, Mr. President, where one side is trying to get a deal to open up the government, to get people back to work, to fund the programs and functions that are important to the national security of our country. And we have one side that's saying, we're not going to sit down and talk. Right. I don't know how you defend that, honestly. Right. I mean, this is a one-sided negotiation in which the White House has put forward a proposal. Senate Republicans have said repeatedly, we are prepared to sit down and talk with Senate Democrats. And Senate Democrats, and my understanding is, the senator from Washington has said, sorry, we're not ready to talk.
Okay, and so this is what's so fascinating about this, and we're going to get into this because while you have on one end Chuck Schumer, who's arguing, hey, we'll reopen the government, but you got to give us what we want. Other than that, we're fine with keeping it closed. That's the ultimatum. And you have Republicans who are saying, well, we're actually willing to come to the table and sit down and talk and negotiate, and we actually will give in to some concessions, but you got to be willing to talk about it. Even with all that in mind, let's say both those things are true. Here's what's also true, that right now, DHS is funded. DHS is collecting a paycheck. And that's not even something that Democrats are denying. And so while Democrats are actually speaking out saying, yeah, ICE is receiving a paycheck. And so who is this really hurting when you have Chuck Schumer and Democrats in Congress deciding that, you know what, we're still going to keep the government shut down because we want to get everything we want. But just don't take my word for it. Take a listen.
But as part of that bill, they increased the ICE budget by over 7 times its annual amount. And they increased the Customs and Border Patrol budget by about double its annual amount. So that's why, as we speak, ICE agents are being paid. As we speak, Customs and Border Patrol agents are being paid out of those accounts. You know who's not being paid? TSA. You know who's not being paid? FEMA. You know who's not being paid? Coast Guard. Do you know what the Democratic proposal would do that's offered by Senator Murray? Pay all those people so they can do the work that they need to do on behalf of the American people and get paid for the good work that they do. That's what our proposal does.
How crazy is this? They're admitting to everybody that we know ICE is still getting paid even though we shut the government down. We know who is getting paid and we know who not getting paid. Wow. And so what's the point of the shutdown if you know they getting paid and you're not stopping them from doing their job? We going to get into that. But first, let's hear from John Fetterman, who also says, we all have to acknowledge that this shutdown had no impact, zero impact on ICE. All of the funding was already in place.
But we could all have to acknowledge that this shutdown had no impact, zero impact on ICE. All of the funding was already in place there from the big, beautiful bill that I did not vote for. I did not vote for that. Mm-hmm. So why should I punish all of those people that work under the DHS that keep our nation more secure? Why they shouldn't be paid? I'm at the airport every week of the year, and I asked all of them in Pittsburgh, hey, do you guys like getting paid for your job? And I've never met one that says, nah, the paycheck's not really a big deal. Everyone, and I believe we should be paid for the work that you've done. Why punish all those TSA agents and all the other people under the DHS umbrella just because the base demands that we just shut it down, absolutely knowing that would have no impact on ICE?
And that right there are the games Democrats are okay playing when it comes to the American people's lives. So you mean to tell me DHS and Border Patrol, they know are funded, they know are collecting paychecks? Now understand this. The logic that Democrats have been trying to use this entire time was the shutdown was because they want to hold ICE accountable. How you holding somebody accountable and they still collecting their paycheck? I mean, hey, they in the same boat as the Congress right now. Congress can't be held accountable for anything because they still collecting the paycheck, right? Government shut down and Congress still collecting the paycheck. How are you sitting here telling the American people that your goal is to hold ICE accountable and that's why you shutting the government down, but then those are the very people that's still getting their paycheck? That plan ain't gonna work. It's only gonna affect the people who aren't getting paid, TSA workers. It's only gonna affect the people whose lives are affected by it, the people who gotta go to airports and traveling and they're getting delayed and they got to change their plans and they got to pay for hotels. The Trump administration has a mandate where they're going to go and deport people who are not in this country legally. And Democrats seem to have a serious problem with that. This is nothing but a repeat of what we saw a few months ago, where Democrats were fine holding the American people hostage, shutting the government down in order to create a level of chaos and then point the finger at the Trump administration. And my fear is that because even if things finally get reopened in a week or two, whenever, we'll be right back here come September when they got to vote to keep the government open once again. And that'll be right around the midterms. Okay, but now let's get into the next clip. You have TSA Union Secretary Treasurer. We had half a paycheck 2 weeks ago, and this weekend we're going to get a big fat zero. That and 300 workers quitting. Take a listen.
We had a half a paycheck 2 weeks ago, and this weekend when we get a pay, you're going to get a big fat zero. So unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues' bank accounts are already in the red.
He says some of his coworkers haven't shown up to work because they can't afford gas, while others are getting second jobs just to survive.
Some of my colleagues donating blood plasma, working Uber Eats, delivering Grubhub, working maybe even another job at the airport. Some people are sleeping in their cars so they can save gas.
The concern tonight, those long TSA lines could soon turn spring break travel plans into a travel nightmare, with TSA officers set to miss their second paycheck on Friday. Out of 50,000 TSA officers, the agency says 300 have quit since the start of the shutdown, and 6% are now calling out. But on Sunday, more than half the TSA officers failed to show up for work at Houston Hobby, leading to a 3.5-hour delay with lines snaking through the terminal. For people worried about spring break, should they be expecting 3-hour lines?
It depends on where you're coming from, and we're going to have to adjust operationally depending on what we see. But we want folks to come to the checkpoint early, prepared, and please do be respectful to the TSA officers.
All of it as Democrats say they're open to funding TSA, but are demanding ICE policing reforms. Yet again, frontline TSA workers are struggling to pay the rent, gas, and groceries. Today, Denver Airport asked travelers to donate $10 and $20 gas and grocery cards to TSA officers. Angelita Reed is already behind on her rent.
Some bills might be put on pause until I get my check. Gas has gone up, so that's another expense. It does get old. This is our third shutdown, so it's very frustrating and it's stressful at the same time.
Now with spring break about to kick into high gear, concerned that more officers will call out or simply quit.
All right, so you heard that. And so what this really comes down to is Democrats don't want ICE to be able to do their job because we know they're getting a paycheck. And so it's not about cutting ICE off and not allowing them to be able to work. We know that's happening. Democrats admit that much. If they want reform in ICE, okay, that's fine. But you don't hold the American people hostage in order to get it. You do it like you do all the other reform you want to get with this country when they want to get legislation and the bills passed. You debate it on the House floor. You bring it to a vote. Right now, what they're looking to do is basically say, hey, we're going to make the American people suffer as much as we can make them suffer and point the finger at the Republicans, the Trump administration, until you give us what we want. And we'll continue to spin it. We'll continue to flip it and make it look like you're the ones who are actually causing all this chaos, not us. We'll just keep saying the same tired lines over and over again. You'll keep hearing Hakeem Jeffries come out and say the same tired stuff. Chuck Schumer, all Democrats, they're just going to keep coming out with the same tired lines and playing it on repeat. And so we'll see where this goes from here. But those are my thoughts in the update. Now let me hear from you. As always, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know you enjoy the content. To stay locked in with future videos, subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.